Hey friends, welcome back. My name is Attorney Ebony Anuforo. I am an immigration attorney located in Jersey City, New Jersey. However, I represent clients with U.S. immigration law in all 50 states and around the world. Okay. Today, I want to talk about a new rule that just changed regarding advance parole. So, if you have an advance parole document and you're planning to travel outside of the United States, there's a major new immigration decision that you need to know about before you get on that plane. On August 13, 2026, the Board of Immigration Appeals, the BIA, issued a decision that changes how travel on advance parole may affect people who have accumulated unlawful presence in the United States. And this is important because for some immigrants, leaving the United States using advance parole could now trigger the 3 year or the 10-year unlawful presence bar. So I want to explain what that means. So for years, many immigrants have relied on advance parole to temporarily travel outside of the United States while they had certain immigration matters pending, right? Advance parole is essentially authorization from the US government allowing certain non-citizens to leave the United States and to seek return after temporary travel outside of the country. But here's the problem. Under US immigration law, if you accumulate more than 180 days of unlawful presence and then depart the United States, you may trigger a 3-year bar. And if you accumulate 1 year or more of unlawful presence and then depart the United States, you may trigger a 10-year bar. Historically, travel pursuant to or with an advance parole was treated differently for the purposes of these unlawful presence bars. And that is what has changed. Okay. Under the BIA's new decision, a departure from the United States on advance parole can now potentially trigger either a 3-year or a 10-year unlawful presence bar. So I want to make something very clear. I want to talk more about this because this is going to concern a lot of people. Now, just because USCIS approves your advance parole does not necessarily mean that it is safe for you to travel. And I want to repeat that again. Just because USCIS approves your advance parole does not mean that it's safe for you to travel. The government issues you a travel document, and the legal consequences actually using that document are going to be two different things. Okay. Yes, you might have an approval, but you have to think about the risk associated especially today, about using the advance parole. So who needs to be particularly careful? Okay. If you have an advance parole and you have ever had a significant period where you were in the United States without lawful status or a lawful presence, you need to have your immigration history reviewed before traveling. And this may include someone who overstayed a visa, um, this may include someone who accumulated unlawful presence before filing their current immigration case, you know, and this is something that it's a really important part of the conversation we need to be having regarding advanced parole and unlawful presence. Not every period when someone lacks immigration status will necessarily count as unlawful presence for the purposes of these bars. This is why I said and I emphasize you need to have your immigration history checked, right? Because there are going to be some important exceptions, but you won't know unless you get your case analyzed. So, for example, unlawful presence generally does not accrue if before a person turns 18. So, for minors, they will not accrue unlawful presence, right? There are also some special rules that can apply to people with DACA, TPS, certain pending asylum applications, certain pending adjustment of status applications, right? And some survivors of domestic violence or trafficking, right? There might be certain special rules for them. So I don't want you to watch this video and automatically conclude that, I've been here without status, so I have a 10-year bar, right? It's not necessarily that simple, right? Your immigration history really needs to be analyzed to determine whether you actually accumulated unlawful presence, how much you accumulated, and whether an exception applies. So what about people who have already traveled, right? That's a big question. Well, this new BIA decision was issued on August 13th of this year, 2026. And the decision is not entirely clear regarding people who traveled on advance parole before August 13th. Um, we believe that the new rule is going to probably, apply to those who traveled on or after August 13, 2026, but we still want to see exactly how the government is going to apply this decision in individual cases. So because the decision is really new, we don't know how they're going to apply the decision in practice, but we're assuming that it's going to affect cases that people who traveled on or after August 13th. And if you are currently outside of the United States using advanced parole, I strongly recommend speaking with an immigration attorney about your specific circumstances before you attempt to return back to the United States. Now, what about people with VAWA, T visas, or other humanitarian cases? Now, this is another reason why you should not assume that social media headlines applies to everyone in exactly the same way. Immigration law contains special protections and exceptions for certain survivors of abuse, trafficking, particularly where there is a connection between the abuse or the trafficking and the person's unlawful presence, right? So that's going to fall under some of the exceptions that I talked about. And that analysis is going to be very fact specific. So if you have a VAWA case, a T visa, U visa, asylum, TPS, DACA, pending adjustment of status case, don't simply assume that you are safe to travel, right? But don't automatically assume that you're barred either, right? Don't make that assumption. Have your individual immigration history reviewed by an experienced immigration attorney. And there's one more warning I want to say, right? I don't want to call it a warning because I don't want to make anyone afraid, but if you've ever had a removal or deportation order, prior immigration court proceedings, multiple unlawful entries, prior departures from the United States, or other immigration violations, there may be additional consequences associated with you leaving the country. Those issues can exist completely apart from this new advanced parole decision, but it is something that you should know if you fall into that category. So here's my recommendation, right? Before traveling on advanced parole, have an immigration attorney answer the following questions. One, did I ever accumulate unlawful presence, right? If so, exactly how many days? You want to know that because that's going to determine whether you have the 3 year or the 10 year bar. Does an exception apply to any of that time, right? Would my departure trigger a 3 year or a 10 year bar, right? Do I have any previous removal orders or other grounds of inadmissibility? And could this particular trip affect my pending immigration case? That's if you are planning a trip outside of the US. Um, so advanced parole is a very important immigration benefit, but an approved travel document should never be confused with a guarantee that traveling is legally risk-free or that you will automatically be admitted back into the United States. Even when you read the document yourself, you will know that there is no guarantee that you will be admitted back into the United States. It is at your risk, okay? Most people and historically have had no problem returning with an advanced parole, but the landscape has changed, so we also have to change along with it. So after August 13 decision, we have to be very careful now going forward. So if you or someone you know has an advanced parole, and you're considering international travel, please share this video with them. This is very, very important. This is, imminent because it's happening now and people are still getting approved advanced parole documents. And then I want you to remember that immigration law is extremely fact specific, right? This video that I'm making is for general educational information only. It's not legal advice for your individual case. If you need to talk about your specific individual case, you need to speak to an experienced immigration attorney. If today's episode answered one question for you, please share this with someone who needs it. Immigration law, especially today, is changing very quickly, right? But understanding your options shouldn't be confusing, and that's why I'm here. So if you need advice about your specific case, you can visit unlawful-law.com to schedule a paid consultation with me. We will come up with a legal strategy specifically tailored to your case. And don't forget to subscribe, right? Because every week I'm going to be sharing information where I'm helping you navigate through the immigration journey, one blueprint at a time, okay? I look forward to you tuning in with me today and joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next discussion. Take care.